It's Thursday, June 25th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. The days of long waits for planning permission to be granted in Barbados may be at an end. Yesterday in the Senate, the Planning and Development Amendment Bill 2020 was passed, and according to Senator Kay McCartney, it will address a bugbear which has plagued the country for much too long. The Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology pointed out that the amendments sought to strengthen the Planning and Development Act passed in January last year.
One important thing that this would usher in is a more collaborative approach that would see the various authorities that have input into the planning process working more closely together as opposed to disparately as they're doing now, and that they'll be able to leverage technology to deliver a higher level of efficiency than we have seen, greater transparency in the decision-making process, and a greater ease of doing business to the public.
Senator McCartney said the island had lost potential business because of the lengthy waiting times.
And so the long delays, and this has been long-standing, and we are seeking to address this at this time, this long delay string pulling process, which could and often did get caught up in the decision making that did not always seem fair and transparent to some people. It has impacted Barbados' reputation. It has impacted our attractiveness as a place to do business and our competitiveness globally. And taken together, the effect was it has really and truly stymied our country's ability to move faster and to put in place the infrastructure and services necessary to stimulate and facilitate certain aspects of growth.
The Household Mitigation Unit received 14,339 requests for assistance from the Barbados Vulnerable Family Survival Program, established to assist those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Corey Lane, who's the Prime Minister's Special Advisor on Poverty, said of those applicants, only 5,000 are eligible for the assistance and only 3,500 will actually receive financial help of $600 for a period of 3 months. Lane gave the update as he accepted a donation of $10,000 in food vouchers from the Rotary Club of Barbados West in collaboration with Jordan's Supermarket.
Back in March, mid-March, the Prime Minister will launch the program to assist the 1,500 most vulnerable families. Obviously, we're having to have the economy, the workplaces and so on shut down for such an extended period of time. We've had to go way beyond that. We've more than doubled that, and we're looking at assisting 3,500 persons. Fortunately or unfortunately, the numbers really exceed that in terms of requests and registration. We have over 14,000 people who would have applied for the program, and we're looking for mechanisms to help beyond that. Unfortunately, at this time, the program is now closed to new entries, and of course, Barbados continues to have one of the widest social safety nets across the Caribbean, across the world. So there's the Welfare Department, Poverty Alleviation Bureau that we've been asked to refer persons to, so that make sure that we really don't want anybody slipping through the cracks or the safety net, so they'll be referred there.
Barbados' ambassador to the United Nations, Elizabeth Thompson, has been speaking about her experience with COVID-19. The ambassador spent 22 days in quarantine at Harrison's Point after testing positive for the virus last month. She has since recovered, and speaking to reporters yesterday, she responded to criticisms surrounding her arrival on May 18 by private jet at the height of the pandemic.
I did not compromise Barbados in any way. I understand that there were allegations that some Barbadian person or business person paid for my travel. That is absolutely false. It is not true, nor did the taxpayers pay. And I don't think that beyond that I owe anybody any further explanation. I came to Barbados to be with my mother, whom the doctor said was dying and who is still gravely ill. She's at home on oxygen because they've indicated it doesn't even make any point putting her in hospital because there's nothing that can be done for her. And I do not regret having come to my mother's bedside, and I owe nobody an apology for that.
The ambassador said being quarantined with the dreaded virus was a character-building experience.
I'm fascinated by the disease because there is no stage at which I felt unwell at all. I never had any visible symptoms at all. No coughing, no sneezing, no runny nose. I never had any symptoms. When I came, I felt well. I had no reason at all to believe that I was ill. I mean, clearly, had I known I was ill, there's no way I would have endangered my mother or my family. So and I continued throughout the time that I was at Household point to feel well. We learned, because I was in a medical facility where I was tested 6 times a day, that there were things that were going wrong internally, but I never felt any manifestation of it. Had I not been in there, I would have been going about my normal business.
Barbados, along with the rest of the region, will have to market itself as a tourist destination in a different way. That's according to aviation expert Neil Boxall, who believes the Caribbean can no longer depend on festivals, conferences and events to lure visitors to its shores. Instead, the former chief executive officer of the Grantley Adams International Airport has called for a further development of Caribbean tourism. He said the change was necessary post-COVID-19 as the pandemic had changed the entire business of travel.
Our tourism focus for many years has been focused on not the Caribbean necessarily as a leisure destination in the way that we focused on the US and the UK, but more event-driven, festivals, etc. We encourage people to come for festivals. We encourage people to come for conferences and business meetings. Now, we've had COVID-19. Pretty much all of the festivals have been canceled. People are now meeting via Zoom. Conferences are being done via Zoom in order to avoid travel. So here in the Caribbean, we need to refocus on encouraging people to come to our islands from other islands for leisure. And some people may see that as a difficult sell, but I do think that there is potential.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Regional news now. All passengers arriving in Antigua and Barbuda will now be quarantined. Prime Minister Gaston Brown announced the mandatory order after health authorities confirmed that 39 individuals who recently arrived in the country tested positive for COVID-19. More in this report from ABS News.
In a national address late Wednesday afternoon, Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown sought to calm fears about the new COVID-19 cases. It was only hours earlier that the Ministry of Health released information to the public that Antigua and Barbuda has recorded an additional 39 cases of the disease.
None of these cases is a threat to the community at this time, and that through our identification, tracing, and quarantining process, the Ministry of Health is containing and treating affected persons.
Borders will remain open, but Prime Minister Brown says everyone entering the country can expect to be tested and go through quarantine procedures.
Let me re-emphasize that everyone who enters Antigua and Barbuda, including returning nationals, to live within communities with relatives and friends, with no exception, will be tested and will be quarantined mandatorily.
He offered further assurances that over 12,000 rapid tests, 20,000 swabs, and 20,000 reagents have been shipped to the island.
Despite the enormous pressure and government revenues that have been badly hit by the effects of COVID-19 on our economy, we have carved out funds to buy these COVID-19 testing supplies. Our purpose is to isolate any who tests positive and to keep them away from the healthy domestic population.
Prime Minister Brown expressed further confidence in the systems in place to deal with increased risk coming from reopening the country's borders.
And finally, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut have asked people traveling from states where virus cases are rising to quarantine for 14 days on arrival. We get more of that story in this Reuters TV report.
So we're announcing today a joint travel advisory.
The governors of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut announced Wednesday that visitors to their states from states where COVID-19 rates are high must quarantine for 2 weeks upon arrival.
Because a lot of people come into this region and they could literally bring the infection with them.
The move underscores a stunning sea change in the fight against COVID-19, which began in big northern cities but now grips the South and Southwest. States subject to the 14-day quarantine are Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Washington, and Utah. Florida, one of the first states to reopen, on Wednesday experienced a record increase of more than 5,500 new cases. Oklahoma, which never ordered a statewide lockdown, on Wednesday posted record new cases for the 6th time this month. Texas, Arizona, Mississippi, Nevada, and California also hit records this week. California Governor Gavin Newsom revealed a startling jump in the number of cases from Monday, when just over 4,200 people had been diagnosed.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.